One filmmaker, 3 groundbreaking documentaries, and the case he says will change everything. The phenomenon.
They're here. This is happening now.
The program.
Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity.
That was only part of the story. And now, moment of contact. New revelations of alien encounters.
In 1933, some disc-shaped object crashed.
It was not anything from this earth.
Multiple films, 3 decades. And tonight, director James Fox is here. Hey everyone, I'm Matt Ford, and welcome to The Good Trouble Show. Tonight, our guest has spent 3 decades making documentary films about whether we are alone. His latest, Moment of Contact, New Revelation, takes us inside the 1996 Varginha, Brazil case, where multiple witnesses say they encountered non-human beings. The military launched a recovery operation, and a physician claims he examined a living being in a hospital. Let's watch.
Have you been exposed to undeniable confirmation of a non-human intelligence craft?
There is something out there, and we should know as the people what it is.
Do you believe that the federal government is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
100%.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
Non-human, exotic origin, vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
For the first time in history, the names of alleged companies and gatekeepers analyzing recovered alien technology are being exposed.
Are any of you willing to name specific individuals?
Dr. James Ryder at Lockheed, Glenn Gaffney, CIA.
For decades, we've heard allegations of the retrieval of objects of alien origin.
In 1933, some disc-shaped object crashed.
It was not anything from this earth.
A UFO crashed in Kingman.
Didn't drop out of the sky. It had to come in on an angle.
The feeling I had during the encounter was like no type of aircraft I've ever seen before.
I saw the evidence. It's a crash retrieval, there's a craft, and there's alien bodies.
But one of the most well-documented UFO crash retrieval cases involving live aliens took place in Varginha, Brazil.
That is a crashed vehicle.
2 seres extraterrestres foram capturados, depois, posteriormente, foram levados para o hospital.
Meu nome é Carlos de Souza.
Meu nome é Cátia Xavier.
Meu nome é Liliane Silva.
Meu nome é Valquíria Silva.
Em 1996, eu vi uma criatura estranha.
Fui até o local. Quando o general de brigada falou para mim que era assunto de segurança nacional, ele morre por aí, acabou.
Deu para ver nitidamente. Era um charuto voando.
O negócio da esquerda não nem estocando, mas tinha um sino aqui na bala. Levaram para Campinas e Campinas levaram para os Estados Unidos.
Now, for the first time in history,
nunca vi caso assim.
We have the most compelling first-hand testimony.
Todo mundo surpreso. Sim, qualquer dos que ia sofrer uma punição muito severa.
Of communication with a live alien in captivity.
Aqui, ó. Foi aqui. Os olhos eram como se fosse uma gota de água.
How much time did he spend with the alien in the room?
3, 4 dias.
Please welcome to the Good Trouble Show documentary filmmaker James Fox. James, welcome to the show. You've been making films about this subject for going on 30 years now. When did you decide you were hanging your hat on the UAP issue?
Thanks so much for that intro. I gotta check that movie out. That trailer was fire.
It was, yeah. I loved it.
Thanks to Buddha Jones. Those guys do incredible work. The owner, John Long, has been incredibly helpful. Actually, George Knapp introduced us for The Phenomenon years ago, and he's been doing all the trailers in Los Angeles, and they're very good at it. But it's funny, actually, when I made my first film in the 90s, everyone was laughing at me, my father especially.
Oh, wow.
Friends, family, reconsider what you're doing. You're wasting your life. There's nothing to it. It's a dead-end road. Like, what are you thinking? And I thought, when I finished it after 4 grueling years, nobody told me how difficult it was to make a documentary, particularly one on UFOs.
Sure.
I was like, I'm never doing another film on this topic ever again, so long as I live. And since then, I've decided, actually, probably since I know what I saw, I said to myself, don't ever say that. Never say never, because you never know, how you're gonna feel. It's almost like, women describe giving birth, and they say that you suffer from almost amnesia, because if they knew how painful it was, they wouldn't do it again, And it's the same
good point.
Documentary filmmaking. If I knew just how difficult it was, I wouldn't do it again. But I, of course, inevitably keep doing it.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I have to say, so, of course, when the New York Times 2017 article came out, that sort of reinvigorated my interest in the UAP topic, but then it kind of fizzled out. And it wasn't until I saw the phenomenon that I was like, this is really, this stuff is real. And so I have you to thank for being in this chair right now, because if it weren't for that amazing film, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing right now. So thank you very, very much. It's your filmmaking does such great justice to this topic, and more importantly, it brings people into this issue that may not have otherwise really become interested in it. But we're here to talk about your latest film, which centers on the Varginha case in Brazil. For viewers who don't know it, that have not seen your film yet, walk us through what happened in January 1996. Start from the beginning, if you don't mind.
Not at all. And thanks for that intro. The phenomenon, if you don't mind me backing up just for a quick second.
Please.
People often say, like, well, how do you know when a film is done? A film is usually done when you're completely depleted of resources, energy. In some cases, you're in the fetal position. Your partner's in the fetal position. Their wives are screaming at you, like, when is this nightmare going to end? We're all in debt up to our eyeballs. You're killing my husband. And I was in a fetal position when the phenomenon was finished. And I won't go bore your audience with the details, but there was a high probability that the film was going to be shelved because there were so many people trying to sue each other. And I remember the distribution company saying to me, and this is just one of 50 things that was hitting me at the time, we think we might have to shelve this because it's too much of a liability, all these threats of lawsuits. We might just use it as a tax write-off and put it on the shelf. And I was at the end of my rope. I was in a fetal position. My partner, Rebecca, was bringing me food up at this loft. And she knew that I couldn't talk, so she would leave the food up there, and she'd come back at 6 or 7 hours later, and she knew the food was, at least I was eating and drinking water, So
right.
So when I hear people like you thank me for the phenomenon, there were a lot of other people involved there in the credits. It really does make it all worthwhile, because that nearly killed me. But let's talk about Moment of Contact. Now, I did a first version of Moment of Contact, and that was the first film that I dropped after making the phenomenon. And I remember a lot of people who remain nameless, very respectable, and they were bringing up valid points. Are you sure, after the tremendous success with creating the phenomenon, you introduced in a much more mainstream audience, household names, people highly respected intel folks, warmed up to the idea of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That's when witnesses claim in the wild to see occupants connected to the craft, and that was really the first time I kind of went all in on that. Rua, Socorro, and a couple of other cases sprinkled throughout. And now you want to do a documentary on an alleged UFO crash where you have live aliens walking through the town of Varginha, Brazil. Like, are you sure that's the direction you want to go right now? You want to tarnish your reputation, you're like, really? And I said, I understand how you feel. And I felt the same way about this case when I first heard about it when I was working on my second UFO documentary, Out of the Blue. I was so opposed to this UFO crash case with live aliens because it was inconceivable to me then, and that you could have an event of this magnitude in a town of population of 100,000, live aliens walking through this town and the whole world not know about it. It can't be, therefore it isn't. So I understand the reluctance, particularly within mainstream outlets, but I just say, look, just watch the movie, listen to the firsthand eyewitness testimony, and draw your own conclusions. Now, let me back up and I'll get into the beginning of the film. So we have testimony from a number of people in and around the town of Varginha, Brazil, January 1996, of a cylindrical shaped object, a little larger than the size of a big school bus, an American-sized school bus, cigar-shaped, metallic, didn't have any controlled surfaces, it didn't have any exhaust vents. It was, according to the witnesses, it had like a tear in the back side of it. It had like a white vapor smoke. They said it wasn't like the smoke from a traditional fire. It was different, and that it was struggling to stay aloft, and it didn't make any sound. In fact, the farmers that I interviewed, Orelina de Freitas, Enrico and Orelina de Freitas, they said that had the farm animals not been making a ruckus in the middle of the night, they wouldn't have even known it was there because it was so silent. But they went out and saw this, this cigar-shaped craft. And then ultimately, a gentleman by the name of Carlos de Souza, who is a geography professor in Sao Paulo. He's also an ultralight pilot, and he was driving very early in the morning to go flying with his friends up to the north, 5 or 6 hours to the north of Sao Paulo, and he was just outside the town of Varginha, Brazil, and he saw that same object that a lot of other people had described, cylindrical shaped object, and he was thinking to himself, my gosh, it looks like it's going to crash. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe 4:30, 5 a.m. And he's looking at it, and he never thought alien. He was thinking maybe it was some sort of super secret military thing. But he was like, that thing's going down. And it did. It went down in a field in a place called the Maiolini Farm. And he turned off the freeway. He drove up this dirt road. He got to an impact site. And he goes, the first thing that was really unusual was that he was expecting the smell, like when an aircraft goes down, you can smell the Jet A fuel. You can smell, fuel, like gasoline, And he goes, that wasn't this smell. This smell was more like rotten eggs, ammonia, sulfur. Like, he said it was so strong that he had to pull his shirt over his face. Like, he couldn't believe it. And there was one piece of it about half the size still intact, and then the other half was sort of spread over a very large area, bigger than a football field, and bits of aluminum, different shapes. And he said he picked one of them up, and he was looking at it, and he was thinking, it was light as a feather. And as he's looking at this piece, and he's smelling this really strong odor that was crippling, some military trucks from the opposite direction came in on the dirt road. We learned from a military base as a ESA military base, and he was threatened at gunpoint to leave. He ended up leaving, and then he saw on the news, whether it was a week or 2 weeks later, he saw on the news these girls in the town of Varginha reporting these strange creatures. They got within 8 to 10 feet of it in broad daylight, and the story was exploding in the news. He saw this one researcher, Claudio Covo, I think his name was. Claudio Covo, Uberajada Rodriguez, Paccaccini, they're all in the news. And he thought, my gosh, maybe what I saw is connected to that. Like maybe, so he had been threatened at the time of silence, but he had one meeting, and he did one very brief on-camera interview about it with Claudio Covo. We have that. And then he vanished for the better part of 26 years. And then there were lots of people in the town. There was the media outlets, Princessa TV, all the journalists were encountering roadblocks, at gunpoint, threatened with prison time if they ask any more questions about these beings, about this crash, about this incident. There were a lot of people in and around the town that either heard about the multiple captures. There were 2 police officers, Marco Chereze, Eric Lopes, captured a being. We heard it went to this one hospital called Regional Hospital. There were reports from another hospital, at Humanitas Hospital, of a being there. There were nurses and doctors quietly in the background. We investigated this for decades. Myself, I'm on my 17th year. My partner, Marco Leal, for over 20 years. And ultimately we heard the Americans came in and took over the operation and flew the material out of a place called Campinas, it was to the south, and back to the United States. And and it happened in January of 1996.
Just absolutely amazing. I want to dig into some of the details. I understand there was a local chief of police, Pedro Aguiar, I believe is how you state it. And his lawyer described a standoff with soldiers who showed up demanding that he hand over whatever evidence that he had. I can't talk this morning. What can you tell us about that? Because it sounds like the cover-up started well before the Americans showed up.
So you just gave me goosebumps because we've been going after Pedro for years. In fact, we tried to get him on the first cut in 2021. We'd been in touch with him. We've done some video calls because we heard that we heard from two separate people that he had a photograph of one of the beings, and it had two fire department and one police officer, I believe. Anyway, we heard about this photograph. We've been going after it. And he was like, I jokingly say he was like a bar of soap in the bathtub. Like you'd get to him, he'd answer the phone, talk a little bit. We had one Zoom call, but then he would vanish, disappear. And this went on for several years. And then finally, last year, or the end of in 2025, in January of 2025, we doorstepped him. As we'd done many times in the past, he reluctantly gave us an on-camera interview. And it went beyond the photograph that he had participated, but he'd seen the being, talked about it, maybe it was covered in a net or something. He was very difficult, and he said, it's not a story, it's part of our history, it happened, I participated. He gave his interview, and then a few months later he died. And that's in the new cut of the film. So we went back 4 times in the period of 12 months, and we tracked down his now widow. She confessed on camera, yes, he said he saw the being, he participated, but didn't want to go into too much more detail. We tracked down his 2 sons, got them on camera. This is just recently. Yes, he saw the being. Our dad was a badass. He had a gun everywhere he went. He dealt with gangsters and drug dealers, and he wasn't afraid of anyone, but he was afraid of these men in suits. We found his dog. We tracked her down. She went on camera. We haven't released this stuff yet. We're going to release it for free. And then we found his lawyer, and his lawyer gave us a sit-down interview. That too is on camera, and we're going to be releasing that in the coming weeks. I've just been so busy. And what we found out was, and he didn't reveal all of this on camera when he gave us his interview, but he was summoned at the first capture in the morning on January 20th to a location. Wasn't given the specifics of exactly what was going on, but it was like full SOS. Get down here immediately. He was given the coordinates. He drove down. He got out of his car. He's making his way up to that point, and he's met with 2 military soldiers armed with rifles at gunpoint. Stop, freeze. You're not going in for national security. He pulls out his gun, and he's pointing his gun back at the 2 young soldiers. He was probably 45. He's like, I'm chief of police. You can't threaten me. You guys are going to be arrested, go to jail. This is national security. You can't go any further. And they have this standoff. And as this standoff is happening, his gun is drawn, their guns are drawn, they're pointing it at each other. He sees 2, I believe, fire department people. It could have been 1 fire department, 1 police, but definitely he sees something being captured, and it was the creature, and it was a net or something that they captured it with. And then he was ultimately taken back as a military base. He talks about all the brass. He said he'd never seen so much military brass. It was an issue of national security. Shut your pie hole. And then he heard the Americans came in, and so we're getting new leads by the day every time we go there. So we found out that when you watch the new cut and you see his participation in the film, you'll hear him say, "I participated. I was there. It happened. It's not a story. It's history." And that's just one. And we have the 2 forensic pathologists because one of the military officers that apparently grabbed the creature one of the creatures with his bare hands died a few weeks later of an infection. And then we interviewed the forensic pathologist. We interviewed Dr. Armando that did the autopsy, and he provided the tissue samples to the head of the company, IPD Labs, Dr. Giannini, who studied the tissue samples, and he went on camera in this latest cut and said, look, man, this is a very rare form of bacteria that's very rare that we do have, but it had evolved in a way that I've never seen any bacteria like it on Earth. And that's all in the film. We got the autopsy report. We got Dr. Armando did the autopsy. We got the doctor who worked on the military officer when he was still alive. He'd never seen anything like it in his life. And then, of course, now we have the neurosurgeon at Regional Hospital who, I know there's been controversy on him because they go, he's changed his story. He said that he didn't, that he just saw the video of the creature but didn't see the creature. It was like, yeah, that was us. We went after him about the video bits, just like we went after the former chief of police. And he confessed on video to me. I remember it was a couple of years ago because we were all about, where's the video? Where's the video? And he gave us the name of the person, Marcos Vinicius, who shot the video. He was a fellow neurosurgeon. He had a heart attack in 2018. We were going after the video, but when pushed further, he denied any further involvement of scene. And then he had a heart attack. And he was staring at the ceiling of the ICU, and he was like, if I survive this, I'm not taking this to the grave. I'm going to contact James's team and I'm going to go full Komodo, which he ultimately did. And I know that people are like, oh, I'm skeptical. And he's like, so if he's lying, and this is the first time in the history of the phenomenon, and I challenge anyone out there to correct me if I'm wrong here, that we have extremely compelling firsthand eyewitness testimony of direct contact, limited communication with a captured non-human intelligence being. Okay, I've never seen this before. We have accounts in the wild, but not captured, not in a hospital with the lead neurosurgeon. Now, I just have to say, if he is lying, he's lying to his wife, he's lying to his coworkers, he's lying to his children, he's lying to his colleagues. I brought together for the first time just last year, late last year, all the doctors, the known doctors that had something to do with this case, Dr. Armando, Dr. Giannini, Dr. Cesario, Dr. Italo, their wives, in some cases their kids. How long have you known Dr. Italo? 45 years, interesting. 35 years, interesting. You talk to people in the town. This guy still is the head neurosurgeon at Regional Hospital. He's not selling a book. He's not asking for a dime. He's willing to take a public lie detector test with his right hand on a Bible. And he's like, yeah, I lied. I wasn't prepared to come forward. Since then, I had a heart attack. I'm not taking the story to the grave. So,
of course,
it's, it is what it is. But obviously, people want more proof. We flew some of these witnesses out to Washington, D.C. We did an event at the National Press Club. I did that on my own dime, borrowing resources to put that together because it's such a significant development in this crash retrieval stuff. I wanted people to give people the opportunity to meet them, to shake their hand, to look them in the eye, ask them the tough questions, meet their wives. We also had a closed door meeting with members of Congress, city members of Congress, to meet the neurosurgeon, meet the forensic pathologist, meet the crash witness, Carlos de Souza, which we did. They were impressed to the point where they're launching their own investigation, trying to get the flight logs. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes on that. And yeah, it's an extraordinary case. And I think it's the case that could settle this debate once and for all.
I absolutely agree. So I actually want to play a tape of this doctor. And I completely agree. When you listen to him, there, in my opinion, there is no way this guy is lying. So let's watch.
Question. I'd like to ask Giannini how long Giannini has known Italo.
Faz quanto tempo que o senhor conhece o Italo?
Desde que ele chegou em Varginha.
Ainda usava fralda.
So a long time. Safe to say a long time.
48 anos.
48 years.
48 years.
Você chegou menos.
Dr. Armando, how long have you known?
35 anos.
35 years.
35 years. How long have you known Italo?
35 também.
35 years too.
35 years. So, doctors, when he says he saw the creature in captivity at Regional Hospital, do you guys believe him?
Então, quando o Dr. Italo fala que ele viu a criatura em cativeiro, né, no CTI, vocês acreditam no que ele fala?
Com certeza. Deixa eu dar uma pergunta. Doutor Cesário...
Tem credibilidade para isso.
Doutor Cesário e doutor Ito, já viram infecção bacteriana comum correr dessa maneira em 7 dias?
Não. Dr. Italo.
Yeah, I mean,
I've
please
got
go
one
ahead.
more. I got something I got to show you. Do you have him in the lab coat in the hospital too?
Say that again.
There's a shot of him in the hospital with his lab coat on. I don't know if you have it or not, but you can play that. I think. Okay. Anyway, so when that was happening, there was a woman that came up to both me and there's that guy Amar from Yes Theory. He's in the video. He was filming all behind the scenes. He's going to be releasing something, I think, in a few months. But in any case, this woman came up to me. She was shaking like this. I can't say exactly who she is yet. She will come forward. Dr. Italo's telling the truth. Amar was there. All my other people, Marco, everyone was there. She was shaking like this. Dr. Italo's telling the truth. Dr. Italo's telling the truth. I said, how do you know? She said, because I was there. And then she described exactly the scene in the regional hospital. I mean, it was just like, and there are other doctors. We were knocking on every single clinic's door just like a month and a half ago, getting other doctors to come forward and talk about, who Dr. Italo is, his character, his credibility. Did they hear about it? Did they see the video? So it's an ongoing thing. And I like I said before, if this guy's lying, I don't see a motive. I just don't. He'd have to be lying to his wife and his kids and his coworkers and all of his and he's not asking for any money.
Right. Well, and the other, yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I just don't see a motive. I just don't.
Well, and the other thing you have to consider too, obviously, a doctor's reputation is everything, especially professionally, because other doctors refer their patients to other doctors if there's something that they don't want to handle. So just from a professional lens, there is zero reason why this man would lie and potentially jeopardize his medical reputation. It doesn't add up. It clearly doesn't.
Yeah, I'm, if I had to put my life, obviously one can never be 100% sure of anything, right?
Sure.
So if I had to put my life on lying or not lying, it would be, I put my life on, he's not lying.
I'm with you on that. There's a detail I want to talk about, something that kind of struck me. So the girls that ran into this being, and they described it as crouching, seemingly injured, with dark brown skin and large eyes. But Dr. Venturelli's account from the hospital is really different. This being is composed, communicative, eyes like a drop of water. Do you think that he saw the same being, or do you think it was, there were multiple beings? What are your thoughts?
I've got a couple. So, I asked him in great detail when we were in Washington, D.C., because I'll get a witness to go, and it drives people crazy sometimes, particularly witnesses, because I will want to do a recreation of every, not just second, but millisecond, okay? And I was doing this with him for probably 4 to 6 hours, and I could see him getting a little irritable because my attention to detail was so, I was so focused. And I said, when you say this being looked out the window twice, what did this being see? What was out the window? Blue sky, it was a sunny day, clouds. I'm like, okay, well, the second capture took place in the early evening. That was 5:30, and that was just a couple blocks away from the girls' encounter. Okay, so when I first started thinking about it, I was like, well, gosh, this thing's got more of a white skin. He didn't talk about the smell. The body was the same, spindly arms, spindly legs, about the size of a 7-year-old. The big, large head, the big eyes. He said they were more lilac as opposed to red, but they're also teardrop. The communication occurred through the eyes, but I started noticing some differences. But then the biggest difference was I was going, well, wait a minute. It couldn't have been, if it was January 20th, it couldn't have been what the girls saw, because the girls, saw theirs at 3:20. The capture was around 5:30. It would have been at the hospital around 6 p.m. that night. It was pissing rain. And so when I got Pedro Aguiar's story of the morning capture from that creature, I was thinking, wow, maybe that's the creature that was taken to regional hospital, because there were two. Maybe that's the creature that he saw. Or do these beings are they like chameleons? Do they have the ability to their skin color? Do they excrete or exude a foul smell when they feel threatened and scared and vulnerable, like a skunk? Did their skin change color in the blazing hot sun? The girls all said this being was suffering. Nobody felt threatened. The girls, actually, Katya had prolonged, telepathic communication with this. She was locked eyes with this. She was the oldest of the group for a prolonged period, and she said it communicated to her, help me or leave me alone. And when I said leave me alone, it was more like, don't hurt me, leave me be, or help me. She was considering helping this being. And to this day, she goes, I feel terrible because this being was non-threatening. It was scared. It was vulnerable. It was suffering. And it wanted help. And I left it. And then the military, and God knows what they did to this poor being. And to this day, she feels guilty about it, that she didn't help it. And I thought to myself, boy, had she helped it, it would have been like the real life E.T.
Yeah. Very, very true. This story is just so incredibly fascinating, this case. I wouldn't even call it a story. Please.
Yeah, one more thing quickly. I thought, because it is baffling, right? There are inconsistencies. If Italo was lying, why wouldn't he knows the girls have been saying it had brown skin and smelly? It's been all over everything. Why wouldn't he just duplicate that?
Right.
I can't find a motive. I just can't. I've been trying to poke holes in the story. And I spent so much time with Dr. Italo, getting to know his wife and his coworkers. We go down to his local watering hole. I don't say watering hole like he's a drinker, but there's this lovely restaurant just a couple blocks away from his house that he and his family go to often. He plays piano like Mozart. He loves music. He loves to perform live in a public setting. I met all the people that he hangs out with in his community, all the interns that he's been working with and still works with. So he'd have to be lying to everybody, and he's not asking for a penny, and he knows this is not a career-enhancing move. He knows that.
Right.
He's claiming face-to-face contact with a bloody alien, right? And he's working on people's brains, and he's still the head neurosurgeon. In fact, Regional Hospital tried to let him go, but he's in so much demand, he's still operating independent contractor because there's nobody to replace him. He does stuff that nobody else can do.
I mean, that speaks volumes right there. I want to talk about the exhumation of Marco Chereze. Of course, he was this military policeman who handled one of the beings and died later. Where does that effort stand on the exhumation of his body?
So Dr. Giannini is serious about it. What we found out recently is that we not only have to get permission from Marco Chereze's family, which we feel quite confident that we can make that happen, but there was another person buried, I think, just on top of him. So they had to reach out to their family, that individual's family, get permission to exhume that body, and then dig down further and get Marco Chereze's body. And I don't know what the percentage of the likelihood of getting that bacteria. But Dr. Giannini wants to do it, and he's very serious about that.
How many separate videos of the Varginha incident do you think exist, and who has confirmed seeing them? I think you've offered something like $200,000 or something for a reward for people to come forward about this with videos or photos.
It's hard to say, right? Because you don't know if there's people scamming. But I think the closest we got to it was a couple years ago. We spoke to a very big YouTuber. I mean, he's very big. He's one of the biggest across Brazil. We went on his show, and he saw it. He was negotiating to buy it, and maybe 6 to 10 years prior. And he's like, "Well, look, I need to see it. I need to know you have it." And he watched it. And then somehow they couldn't come up with the money. Something weird went sideways, and the person with it felt betrayed, exposed, betrayed. Something went sideways. That individual reached out to us, 6 to 10 years after the fact. Don't give me exact quote on this and the exact time frame, but it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. We were in negotiations with this individual, and the problem is that I was like, look, man, I need to see it, and once I see it and have it looked at, I know I can raise the money to compensate you for the film. The problem is, he's like, well, I got burned last time I showed it, and it was like we were in negotiations. I thought it was going to happen. I really did. That was the closest we got to it, and we knew someone who dealt with this individual that had seen it. So we felt pretty confident that we were going to get it. But then that person went completely dark. There was another person that we were in touch with last year. I think it was last year. And this person wanted no money. Just come and take it. I want this burden out of my life. I don't want this. I got the impression that it was a husband that had died and left it with his wife, and the wife wanted it out. Like she just wanted. I said, look, I'll jump on a plane. I'll come meet with you. It was far away, but I got to have some proof. You got to show me a couple of seconds, because I can't just, every time someone says they have something, I can't jump on a plane. I was finalizing the program right here in the studio behind us, and this individual gave me a time frame. If it's not by this time, and I said, look, you need to show me. We had the standoff, and then gone. And then we spoke to two individuals. In fact, Michael Schellenberger contacted those two individuals because he was going to report on this for the New York Post. And the New York Post said, well, we'll talk about this so-called alien footage, but we need confirmation from at least two people that have seen it. So Michael Schellenberger, with the New York Post a couple years ago, got interviews with those people and felt it compelling enough to write about it. And the source of the footage, it was a photograph, was Pedro Aguiar. And I pressed Pedro on camera harder than you can ever imagine in January of 2025. And this is in the movie. A lot of it's in the movie. And he ultimately confessed that, at one point there was a photograph, didn't know where it was. It's like, oh my God. And so that's a source. Military X had a source. We were probably maybe a day or two away from this source showing it to Marco Leal, my partner. We were super excited about that. Then the military base called, threatened Military X. Not like we're going to, basically like, are you still living at this location? How's the wife? How the kid? By the way, there's this American filmmaker poking around. Have you met? Blah, blah, blah. Now there's other source. We've talked to two doctors, three doctors that have seen the footage that Marco Vinicius shot. And we're trying to chase that down. But it's tough, man. It's really hard because people that were involved in the case, not everybody, but most people were threatened. And that's with no evidence. Now, if you have videotaped evidence, you got something to be worried about.
Wow. Sorry for the pause. For some weird reason in my ear, and I've never had this happen before, but it's like the signal is being jammed. I have these, wireless belt packs, so I'm having a difficult time hearing you. So I'm just going to kind of work with it best I can. Probably, I don't know, Arrow or whoever back east is fucking with us right now. Oh, did I lose you?
I'm kidding.
Oh, okay. You totally had me. Hey, do you remember the Battlestar Galactica back in the late 70s with the Cylon Centurions?
I remember, yes.
That's exactly how you sound to me right now in my earpiece. So, okay.
I'll try to speak slowly.
Yeah, this is, I've never had this happen before. Now, you said an American contacted you with knowledge of where the recovered beings from Varginha were taken on to the U.S. side. Without compromising your sources, what can you tell us about what they told you?
Let's put it this way. I think the evidence for Varginha is not far from Virginia.
Got it. Okay. I think you pretty much settled that. I want to play another clip.
and it gained altitude again, and then it lost power completely and disappeared behind the mountain.
Nesse momento eu saí maluco.
So he went like a crazy man after his car.
O pessoal deve estar desesperado.
These people must be desperate.
Você tem assim, combustível, fogo.
You think about fuel, you think about
Pessoas
fire,
desesperadas,
desperate
de
people
ajuda.
inside.
All right, so tell us what we saw there.
So we had a closed door meeting with sitting members of Congress to introduce them to some of the leading witnesses. I actually had, I'd have to do the exact official count, but it was at least four more, maybe six other people that we were applying for visas that got turned down, unfortunately. But we did get the neurosurgeon, we got the forensic pathologist, and we got the lead crash witness, Carlos de Souza, in to meet with sitting members of Congress. It was going to be written up by a very reputable, well, some people would argue that, but whatever, mainstream news outlet. The story was written, it was copy edited, there were photographs taken, it was going to print, and then literally hours before it was going out to print, it got stepped on. But that was a private meeting with members of Congress on the Varginha case, because we're hoping to inspire them enough to start an investigation on the American side. And we were, according to Congressman Burleson, we were successful at that.
Okay.
I'll say one more thing,
Yeah.
which was fascinating. I had to pinch myself in the meeting. I never thought, just even a few years ago, that probably a year ago, that we'd be sitting with members of Congress, meeting with an alleged first-hand witness, in this case a neurosurgeon, to describe face-to-face contact, limited communication with a non-human intelligence that it was in captivity, and that those allegations, those claims would be taken very seriously. I mean, they were asking Luna and Burchett and Burleson, and there were other chiefs of staff and stuff there. They were asking very intelligent questions, very serious questions. They were taking those allegations very, very seriously. I mean, particularly a neurosurgeon. I mean, look, the guy oozes credibility.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is, as soon as you were done talking about the source telling you stuff, right here on the top of the page, as soon as you were done with the question, that interference just switched completely off. So I think we're getting jacked with here. I see how you roll. All right, I've got another clip to play here.
3 members of Congress were in a room, asking questions of a medical doctor who says that he was in the presence of a live alien being in the context, an extraordinary case that James has been investigating for a long time with lots and lots of witnesses. And, I doubt that's ever happened before for members of Congress. So I'm just curious, what that experience was like for you, and whether you have anything you want to say about that meeting and what that meant, and how that might have affected your relationship to all of this.
It was an amazing meeting. We met so my office is down the hall from Tim Burchett's office. We met in Tim's office, and it was a great group. We had these gentlemen. The one thing that kind of came across to me is that they were absolutely genuine in what they had been experiencing. They felt like that this was that they were compelled to come forward, but again, they knew that this would maybe threaten their reputation, threaten potentially their careers. And the type of courage that takes is something that should be applauded. And so it was amazing to hear that. And when we were able to ask details on the question, on the narratives that they had given us, the fact that they could go into more further details without having to think about it, it became clear that they truly did have this experience.
One of the aspects that we tried to focus on at our event at the National Press Club, January 20th of this year, was that we kind of understood the potential national security issues related to any potential recovered technology, but that, as David Grush would refer to them, the biologics or the non-human entities, non-human beings, non-human intelligence beings, that shouldn't have any national security issues to releasing that nature of information to the world. Do you agree with that, or do you feel that that's the case?
I absolutely agree with that. I agree. I totally agree with that. Like, if we have evidence or if we have bodies, we should release that to the world.
Now, I understand extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but you've got the lead neurosurgeon, Dr. Italo, who's still working on people's brains. He's still the lead neurosurgeon at Regional Hospital today. He's not selling his story. He's not selling a book. He'd be lying to his mother, to his entire family, his wife, his children, his coworkers, his colleagues. Where's the motive, But I've seen people attack him in ways that to debunk. And I understand it's a tall order to believe something of that nature, but I think that story merits a deeper investigation. That's one of the reasons why I felt it important to introduce some of the primary witnesses to members of Congress and people on the task force so they can shake their hands, meet their wives, and say, wow, I find this eyewitness testimony very compelling. Perhaps we can do a little digging now that we have, potential flight from the United States, Campinas, we have a date, we have a location. Maybe we can find out anything on the American side.
What I'm trying to do is get specific things that might confirm some of the stories that have happened. So, for example, in the Varginha case in Brazil, we can try to track down the flight logs. I think we've already sent a letter to the FBI requesting that they look into this and determine what the flight logs were and try to get that information. We can make a request of any kind of documents to be released from Brazil. When we have a press conference on this, and I hope that Anna does a press conference soon, I'm going to be making very specific asks. And one of those will be that other nations join the United States to demonstrate the same level of disclosure. Because there's likely information that's being held by other countries as well.
I'm having a hard time hearing you here. Is your mic
Just kidding.
on?
Just kidding.
Ah!
I got you.
You got me. You got me. My God, you even had the little. I'm like, wait a minute.
I didn't. Oh yeah. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist.
You did better than me. You did better than I did.
No, you did pretty good. Okay, so the question I was actually reading with my mic switched off. It's funny. One of the mods, Mary, that helps us out. She just she just texted, "Damn you, Matt." I guess they were all panicking too. Okay, so talking about aircraft. So a 1949 CIA document references recovered materials from Brazil. You've also referenced Colonel Clausen and this unauthorized U.S. cargo plane on Brazilian soil. And I remember when I watched your incredible thing at the press club, there was some talk of like trying to track down the flight plan of this. Probably it was a C-130, I'm guessing. Has anyone had any luck with that?
Oh, we're doing a deep dive. I mean,
awesome.
Let me tell you, Colonel Clausen. Thank you, Colonel, by the way. He's also a witness. He was a fighter jet pilot. And he was contacting me a couple of years ago anonymously. And, I get contacted by a lot of people. But this guy was like really knowledgeable. Finally, after a couple of months, I was like, excuse me, thank you, by the way. But who are you? He goes, well, actually, I'm a United States Air Force colonel. I'm a former fighter pilot. I had a dramatic UFO encounter back in 1980 over in Northern Europe. And we hit it off, and we've become friends ever since. And he was like, let me just tell you, I believe that the Americans were involved. And if they were, even if it was a top secret mission, there's going to be a paper trail. And let me tell you where. And he started rattling off. If it was a C-17, then it would have to get refueled. The flight distance was this far. There would have been this. And jokingly, he participated at the National Press Club event that we did January 20th, and you can watch it for free online. I think News Nation did a whole thing on it. But he's jokingly called Colonel Paper Trail now because he's going through all the different possibilities of where the paper trail would be. And he's gotten every single tail number for every single C-17. And we don't know for sure it was a C-17. We think it was a C-17, but it could have been a C-130. But he's getting all the tail numbers, finding out where they were based, how they, and then members of Congress are helping us now too, because as you saw in the movie, we filed a FOIA request back in 2022. It took so long to hear back from them that I'd forgotten that we'd filed that. Our team, it was a gentleman that helped out with that, and we got a response in 2025, and it was from the CIA. And they were CIA was like, you know, we can neither confirm nor deny. I mean, it's almost comical, and therefore your request, you know, is denied. And then they said, you know, due to National Security Act of 1949, you know, we're exempt from having to disclose that nature of blah 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 blah. But it was interesting that we set this FOIA in, and we got a response from the CIA, and the CIA seems to be. I mean, the more I learn. And you have to talk to UAP Gerb. He's way more knowledgeable than I'll ever be. But the more I learn, it sounds like the CIA has been kind of in charge of all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I co-wrote an article for the Daily Mail with Chris Sharp and Josh Boswell a couple of years ago, where we detailed exactly what this little-known office called the CIA Office of Global Access, the dirty little things they've been doing, picking up vehicles from our neighbors, not from here. So the CIA, oh yeah, there's some dirty stuff. So I'm curious. Obviously, people come to you not only about this particular case, but others, I'm sure, and you've probably got some pretty juicy stuff in your head or on your laptop or whatever. Do you have any kind of contingency plan, a kind of dead man switch, we'll just say, if something were to ever happen to you such that all of this knowledge that you have not made public gets out?
I don't. They could just take me out and all those secrets would go to the grave.
Oh, come on now. You gotta have some kind of backup plan. I certainly hope you do.
You know, I would be worried, and I've thought about this, like to say, you know, I did get my hands on the video, I'd be worried.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that scenario a lot of times. Then I would be legitimately worried. I can assure you the powers that be do not want that photograph or that video, despite even AI.
Right.
They don't want that out. So, you know, anybody with that type of evidence it needs to be worried. I'll tell you about this meeting I had. I'm not sure how much time we have. I'll be quick.
You're good.
I met with Dr. Peter Sturrock, a physicist at Stanford University, and I interviewed him for a film I did Out of the Blue. I did one version of Out of the Blue, then I did another version called The Director's Cut, and that was like an additional, at least two and a half more years of work. And he might have appeared in I Know What I Saw, but definitely Out of the Blue. And he reached out to me a few years back, somewhat out of the blue, and he was like, hey, do you want to get together for lunch? And I said, yeah. He goes, you want to meet at that restaurant on the north side of the Golden Gate Bridge in a town called Sausalito? This is an Italian restaurant. We'd met there before. Yeah, it'd be great. Hey, do you mind if I bring, a friend or whatever? And he's like, no, I think just the two of us for this meet. Long story short, we meet, and he says, I got this material that I've been collecting over the decades, and it's from various alleged UFO incidences, and it's basically metal stuff, samples, and angel hair, and it's like, my God, that got my attention. And he said, I'm gonna give you some. I'm dispersing it over a very large area, but you need to make a promise to me. And, okay, Dr. Sturrock, what's that? He said, you need to promise me that you're never gonna talk about it. And I've gotten rid of it since then, so I'm happy to talk about it now. You're never gonna talk about it on a phone, via email. It's face-to-face only, no recording devices. And I looked at him and I thought, Jesus, are you that paranoid? Dr. Sturrock? Really? And he said, yeah, I'm that paranoid. And you should be too. And I said, well give me Like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I had some stored in my, and he had it. He goes, I'm not an idiot. I had it all over the different place. But he goes, I had some in my bank vault. And I had some being analyzed in labs, but I dispersed it over a very large. He goes, I had in my bank vault, and my bank manager called me, and he said, Dr. Sturrock, Mr. Sturrock, I don't have any explanation for this. We're going to investigate, but your bank vault door was open, and the contents are empty, and they left the door open when they left, almost like, obviously intentionally.
Yeah.
And he's like, they can get to you. And he goes, I've had them show up at a lab and take the stuff. My bank vault was emptied and the door left open. This is Dr. Sturrock. And if anybody out there knows who Dr. Sturrock is, this guy is not known to, he's not crazy. He's a grounded physicist. I mean, Stanford, and he was serious as a heart attack when he told me this stuff. I kept the stuff for a few years, then I gave it to a few scientists, and I hope that whatever they did with it, I hope it gets published publicly. I'll reach out to them at some point and find out. But yeah, he said that. And, people that have, I'll give you one more example. This is crazy. I was investigating the Phoenix Lights case for over a decade, on and off, right? I did back and forth. I got the Governor Fife Simon to go on the record for the first time, and I'll let everybody know, he initially came out and was like, this is serious. We need to launch an investigation, and we're doing this, that, and the other thing. And he was very serious. And then I think it was later that day or very shortly thereafterwards, he had that silly press conference, and one of his aides dressed up in a suit and yada, 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 made a joke out of the whole thing, which he later confessed that not only did he really launch an investigation, but he himself saw the craft, and he determined immediately it was not of Earth origin. Anyway, during my early investigations, I was talking to Frances Barwood. She was one of the, she was a town councilwoman, and she was one of the few representatives that were coming publicly and saying, hey, people saw something, let's launch an investigation. And she was lampooned. But this guy contacted her, and he was like, hey, you're one of the few people that are taking this seriously. I'm a Vietnam vet. I was on my roof with a camera and a tripod, and I was going to get a good shot of the what was that media writer that it was the
Hellbop? Was it Hellbop?
The Hellbop comment?
Yeah.
He was going to get shots of the Hellbop comment. He was all set up with his tripod and his camera, and he had a little CB radio, and he was, just something that he did. And he said he could hear these truckers on Interstate 10 between Tucson and Phoenix describing this very large boomerang-shaped craft, huge. And he was like, according to the truckers, he's like, hey, that thing's coming right for me. So he turned his camera and he got it flying right over the top of him on camera with a tripod, which is like everyone's like, tripod, camera, So he's like, I got this incredible video. Would you like to see it? And they make arrangements he was going to drop it off at Francis's office. And I don't know if it was later that day or the next morning. I can't remember exactly, but it was very shortly after the phone call. Two men in suits showed up, and it was July. The big sighting happened on March 13th, but this was July. It was very hot, June or July. And he goes, yeah, these two men in suits showed up in a government vehicle. And he goes, that was really odd because it was really hot. It was over 100 degrees and they were in suits, which was a bit odd. And they knocked on my door and they were quite menacing looking. And they said, hey, we're here from Frances Barwood's office to pick up the footage. And he thought, well, that's great. That's a bit of a relief. I guess I saved me a trip. And so the only question they asked him is, did you make any copies? And he said, no. And he gave the footage. And then he doesn't hear back from Frances Barwood. So he calls Frances like a week later. He's like, well, what'd you think? She goes, what do you mean, what did I think? You were supposed to drop it off. Well, I didn't have to drop it off because two men from your office came around and picked it up. She goes, I didn't send anybody around. Wow. He's like, well, yeah. And you could ask Frances Emma Barwood. She'll tell you about it. So that was like, I'd heard about these men in suits, a couple times prior to that. But that was chilling. And had this uncanny ability to appear. And I could go on until tomorrow morning with cases that I've heard. And I finally, of course, with Varginha, I went all in when the mother of the two girls said that she had a visit from 3 or 4 men in suits, intimidating her, threatening, offering money to get her daughters to lie, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so they're from some organization, probably the CIA, I don't know.
Yeah, and could I have you for like another 10, 15 minutes? I know we said an hour.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay, so we'll make it quick. I just wanted to relate what happened to me, because some of our viewers may not be aware of this. So I mentioned the story about the CIA Office of Global Access. So this came out back, I think it was around 2 years ago, and Chris Sharp and myself had been working on this for a couple of months, and then Josh came in towards the end. We were insanely locked down in our communications. We only used Signal, it's all before Pete Hegseth, of course, but we didn't tell anybody about this thing. The story, about an hour before it's going to go live on the Daily Mail, we have this call with an ally in the intelligence community, and this ally says, look, from here on out, you cannot ever mention your sources' names, even if you're alone in your bedroom or alone in a hotel or anything, because this article is going to cause a firestorm at Langley, and they're going to want to know how you guys found out about this. And so that was kind of the warning. Like, oh, okay. Didn't really kind of think about it. The article goes live at 7. At, I think it was 10 o'clock LA time, I hop on a plane to fly to Las Vegas for a television show I was working on. I land in Vegas. They put me up at the Waldorf Astoria on the Strip. There is no casino or anything. So get into my room, grab my laptop, and I decide to go upstairs to the top floor bar to work on my laptop. Now, I don't drink, so I'm drinking a soda water. This U-shaped bar, there are only 8 people in this huge bar, and there's only at the bar me. And then about 10 minutes later, this attractive 30-something walks in and sits a seat away from me, starts trying to strike up a conversation, and I'm in my own zone, so I kind of ignore her. So she goes and she sits at like the 10 o'clock position to me at the bar. And then this gentleman, a little bit older than me, walks in with a white Hawaiian shirt and sits directly across from me. Now I'm on my laptop typing away, and I just kind of see him out of my view. And all of a sudden I hear him say UFO. He's talking to the girl. And I just stop. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, what are the chances of me being in this 5-star hotel with no casino? It's not like there's a bunch of riffraff in there. There are only 8 people in this entire room and 3 people in the bar, including myself. And this guy says UFO. So I decide to engage him. I fold my laptop down and I say, excuse me, did you read that article that came out this morning in the Daily Mail about UFOs? I overheard you talking about it. And he looks directly at me and he says, no, but that article I just read about Lou Elizondo being a liar sure sticks out of my head. And I know I froze because A, I knew, one, Lou hadn't been in the media in quite some time. B, what are the chances of somebody, A, even knowing who he is at that time, it's all before the movies. And so I just kind of blurted out, well, you should look into it. I fold my laptop back up, and I text someone on Signal that comes from a certain 3-letter agency and said, this is what's going on. What should I do? Is this like OSI, CIA, or whatever? And the advice I was given, don't engage the individual at all. And, of course, my heart is pounding at this point. And so I wait about 10 minutes. He's still kind of talking to the girl, and then he's on his phone. So I finally decide, you know what? I'm going to try it again. What do I have to lose? So I fold my laptop down. I look directly at him and I said, hey, did you ever find that article about in the Daily Mail about the UFO stuff? He stands up from his stool, takes his phone, starts taking my photo with it, and says, no, but that article about Lou Elizondo being a liar sure sticks out of my head. And he puts his cell phone in his pocket and he walks out the door. It scared the holy hell out of me. And it told me, A, that my communications had been monitored. And it was clearly a message that I needed to shut the fuck up. But that's the kind of harassment journalists and others, and I'm glad you have not been the recipient of anything of it. But it is real, and it's quite frankly frightening.
I'll tell you something real quick. I promise. My son's going on a camping trip tomorrow. He's 11, and he's going away for four days. And so I promised I'd take him out to dinner. So that's why I got to go soon. But I had a friend of mine that had a catering company. And I did painting jobs. I parked cars. I was a valet parker at this fancy hotel, Casa Madrona. And I would also volunteer sometimes at my buddy's catering gig. And, it was kind of fun, But we were working at this place called Opus One Winery in Napa. And it was a big fundraising event for the Republican Party. And we were told specifically, don't fraternize with any of the guests. Just walk up, serve the food, keep your pie hole shut. You're going to be, and Newt Gingrich was there. Now, at the time, there was a congressman, Schiff, who was pushing for transparency on the Roswell case because the Roswell was coming up to the 50th anniversary, or maybe it just had happened the 50th anniversary, or maybe it was about to happen. I can't remember exactly. But it was getting a lot of media coverage. I mean, the 50th anniversary for Roswell, you had Corso came out. I mean, it was getting a lot of traction. A lot of people were talking. And then you had the sitting member of Congress, Schiff. And he was like, they're lying and they're not being straight with me. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. I was actually expecting in the 90s that Roswell was coming out. Like, wow, And then all of a sudden he gets cancer and he's dead. Mm-hmm. That was kind of weird. Like, could have been a coincidence. I'm just saying, from an outsider, I was watching this go down and it spooked me, right? So anyway, I'm at this event at Opus One Winery and I see Newt Gingrich. At the time, he must have been Speaker of the House. He probably was Speaker of the House. And I had these little bacon wrapped, it was like a piece of steak or pork wrapped with bacon. They were really good. And I had a little tray of them. And I was walking around and I was giving people, samples of food. And there were drinks. And I was like, I knew I wasn't supposed to talk to these guests, but I couldn't help myself. So I asked Mr. Gingrich, Speaker, would you care for, and he, don't mind if I do. And he walked over. And they had their wives there too. And there were other members, but I don't remember exactly other senators that were there. But the Speaker of the House, who I particularly remember, and there were wives. And I said something like, do you anticipate any kind of, disclosure on the UFO topic? And he looks at me and he goes, on the what? On the what topic? I said, the UFO topic. And he goes, and he kind of stops and he looks at me and he goes, oh, Congressman Schiff was working on that. And I said, yeah, Congressman Schiff died. He goes, yeah, it's unfortunate, isn't it?
Wow.
Kind of spooky, right? And I got these like chills. I was like, the look, and again, it could have been me, my interpretation of it, but the look that I interpreted from him was, you're in over your head, kid. You're like, now just stop asking questions. Again, I'm not accusing him of being on a super secret, having any involvement, but the way he said it really gave me the creeps at the time. Yeah. So anyways, he walks away and the wives stayed on with a couple of men, but primarily the wives. And they were like, the public has a right to know. And I feel like, and I was thinking to myself at the time, it's too bad there weren't more women in power, because these women were like, this secrecy isn't right. And the people have a right to know. And I thought, my God, if I had a secret camera right now, it would be amazing. But sorry, I did my best. But I met Speaker Gingrich about that.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Just a couple questions from the audience. This is from Dub Snapper. Does James intend to try interviewing Eric Lopez again? He drove the car when Marco Chereze captured the ET on the roadside.
Yeah, so I just found out two things. One is yes. We contacted his wife. Now I don't know if this is a little funny unknown fact. Eric Lopes. Some people call Lopes, Lopes. Eric married his partner who died, Marco Chereze, who died after allegedly capturing the thing with his bare hands. Eric Lopes married his sister. He had two sisters. Marta, who participated in the film, his other sister we contacted. And I said indirectly through a translator, what is it going to take to get Eric? And this is right after we doorstepped him and he threatened to shoot us. What is it going to take to get your husband to come forward? Because that's what I always say. I don't say, can he come forward or will he come forward? What is it going to take? Because everyone's got something that it'll take this. Her response was, bring my brother back to life and he'll talk. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But I also found out recently, I was there in late January this year. We had a big screening with the sitting member of the mayor, and there was another security guard that I'd known, and he came up to me and he's like, hey, I met with Eric Lopes not too long ago, and he did have a gun, and he wasn't going to shoot you in the face. He was going to, so he had a phone in one hand, and apparently he did have a gun, as we all suspected, and he did threaten to shoot us. But he was going to shoot, just a little funny thing, he was going to shoot a couple rounds in the sky first, and then if we didn't scatter, which obviously we would.
That'd be, yeah.
But, everyone's looking very carefully at the reaction and the treatment that Dr. Italo is getting, the lead neurosurgeon. I did put out a statement because I knew he was getting some pushback and something was happening with his job. And anyway, I made a very public statement and I put it out there and I said, if any military people are considering paying him to dedicate my rest of my life to finding you and exposing that, just so you know, like we have eyes on them. And I remember a number of people at the recent screening that we had of Moment of Contact, New Revelations in Varginha with the mayor and others, and Military X was in the crowd. Nobody knows that. And I had people come up to me and they said, I'm a witness, I'm this person, I saw this, I saw that. And when you came forward and you made that statement about Dr. Italo, everyone interpreted that made us feel a lot more secure. So, and I'm also working with the sitting member, the mayor, and saying, like, keep your eyes on these people, make sure these people are protected. And I think the more public you go, the quicker and more public you go, the better off you're going to be.
I agree with that. So James, final question. You opened the phenomenon with the line, the question is no longer if they are here, but why? After 30 years of doing this, do you have an answer? James has fallen asleep. Okay, well, I think we may have lost him. There's been just some crazy shit during. Oh, there we go. Now you're back. Yeah. Okay. So my question was, my final question. So you opened the phenomenon with the line, the question is no longer if they are here, but why. After 30 years, do you have an answer? 30 years later.
Oh, back.
Wow. Okay. This never happens on the show. So I guess they don't want me to ask this question, which I'll do it a third time. You open the phenomenon saying there's no longer a question of if they are here, but why. Do you have any theories as to why after all this time?
All right, you broke up again. I got your back now. Ask it one more time. Hopefully it doesn't freeze. Go.
Oh, my God.
I know.
So in the phenomenon you asked, it's no longer a question if they are here, but why. Do you have an answer to that after all this time?
No, I don't. And funny, I feel like I got really close to having some idea. I was talking to an individual that investigated the phenomenon for, I think, 16 years in an official capacity. And look, you never know who's going to be in a position, but I look at specific people, and I think if anyone's going to know, it would be them. And they talked about it being a little scary. And I guess that would be the intent, but I never found out what the intent is. And I'll keep digging, and if I hear from someone that I respect or someone that I feel would be in a position to know, obviously I'll share that publicly. But I don't.
Wow. Okay. So you're breaking up. All I have to say is I've done probably 200 shows and I've never had this happen. This is like $1,000 IFB pack, and I've never had those kinds of noises on there. So I think someone's effing with us. But James, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time, and just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the filmmaking that you do. I dare say we would not be here along this path. We would not be at this point in time in UAP disclosure if it were not for these wonderful films that you've done. So please keep it up, and God bless you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your reporting as well. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, James Fox, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, wow, that was pretty crazy there. Yeah, so so I wear 2 wireless belt packs. These are like television quality belt packs. One is for my microphone, and then the other one is for this earpiece called an IFB. And right when we got to the part where I was going to asking about the CIA, it was just like his voice came back doubled, and with this kind of, it sounded electronic, like he was a robot. I've never had that happen, nor have I ever had Zooms drop off like that. And we have a near T1 connection here at the studio. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this show. I have a favor to ask. So about a month ago, we changed the category of our YouTube channel from science to news and politics, which is really what we're doing here. We talk about the UAP issue from a political lens, from a national security lens. And when we did that, it screwed up the algorithm from with YouTube. Like when people tune into the show, we can see who are returning viewers that are subscribers, and then we can see who are viewers that YouTube recommended our show to. And what we found is after we changed the show of our category, YouTube stopped recommending our show to people. So what I would just love to ask all of you to do, if you value this show, if you value the kind of guests we have, please do us a favor. These are the things that YouTube looks at and decides whether or not to recommend our show or to promote our video to other people. Give us a like, subscribe if you haven't. There's that little alarm bell. If you set that to all, YouTube looks at that as a giant signal that the content is good and the viewers really enjoy it. And then also, please leave a comment. I try my best to respond to them all, at least in the first 24 hours. But all of those things, if enough of you out there do that, hopefully YouTube will start recommending our show to people, because obviously it doesn't matter how good your show is or how great your guests are. If the YouTube algorithm isn't recommending you to new viewers, your show isn't going to grow. And I think that we're doing really important work here. And then finally, we are on all of the podcast platforms. You can look for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. Same thing. If you would please just take 30 seconds out of your day to give us a rating, leave a comment, all of those things. I know every YouTuber in the world asks you to hit the subscribe and ring the bell, all that kind of crap, but it actually makes a difference in allowing us to be able to keep doing this show. And then finally, if you do wish to become a subscriber, not a subscriber, a supporter of our show, the studio rent here in LA is not cheap, and we do not have any sponsors. We strictly rely on donations from people like yourself watching the show. So if you wish to donate to this show to help keep us on the air, you can donate at Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. Also, super chats are always open. You can leave a super chat or become a subscriber. I'm not sure how they call it on YouTube, but where you have like a paid tier type thing. Anyway, all of that stuff really helps us, and we are super lucky to have the fans that we do. But of course, we don't want to be always preaching to the choir. We want to bring people into this topic that are new to it or have never been exposed to it. And you leaving the comments, hitting subscribe, all that stuff, hitting the thumbs up, those are the signals YouTube looks at to decide whether or not to show our video on people's feeds. So anyway, enough with that. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope everyone enjoyed it. James Fox is just an amazing filmmaker. And the thing I'll say, what is really important about what people like James Fox are doing and other filmmakers in this space is, I would guess probably 98% of the population has no clue as to what is going on with this particular topic. They have no idea that members of Congress know that this is real and are taking this seriously. And it is through the magic of good storytelling on the big screen or small screen if it's in your home, and people like James Fox and others. What they do is what opens this topic up to the populace. And at the end of the day, it's you and I telling our lawmakers we want something done on this. And if we want to move the needle, we need to let our lawmakers know that this is important. And vehicles such as the films that James Fox have done and continue to do, that helps build that momentum, that helps build that hopefully will snowball effect, where hopefully one day soon we'll reach critical mass. So please reach out to your lawmakers. Anyway, everyone have a great Sunday. Thank you very much for tuning in. We do have an episode that will be coming up very soon where I will be exposing some written evidence that shows that the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office was constructed to be a disinformation operation. And of course, we know that Anna Paulina Luna is already talking, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who I had the pleasure of chatting with at the after show party at Real Time with Bill Maher on Friday. She's a lovely individual, smart, in it for the right reasons, and is really fighting for UAP transparency. But we know that she stated, I think yesterday, that AARO needs to be disbanded and disfunded. And with what I'm about to put out, that should be this week. I don't have an air date for you. I think it answers the question closes the door completely shut. AARO must be disbanded. It must be defunded because it is literally a machine designed to lie to Congress. And why in the hell we're paying for that? And we're also going to reveal the amount, the classified amount of money that AARO has been given. And I think it's going to make everybody watching this show that has a hell of a time putting food on the table or paying their rent or paying their mortgage. It's going to make you goddamn mad at the amount of money being wasted at the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much. Call your lawmakers. Tell them that we deserve disclosure. And again, please take some time after the show to do those little things on YouTube. That will definitely do us a solid, which, by the way, Ross Coulthart told me in Australia, doing a solid means something else than what I'm talking about. Anyway, everyone have a great Sunday, and thanks again also for our mods that helped out. And sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you soon on The Good Trouble Show.